Hello guys, welcome to the round 5 recap of the Sinquefield Cup, which is the last event of Grand Chess Tour before the finals in Brazil. Today, I am going to give a very detailed and deep analysis of one of the most brilliant games which was played between Gukesh Domaraju, the current world champion, and Jan Christoph Duda, who was his second for the world championship. Before that game, I would just give a short 1 minute recap of what was the result in other games. Fabi vs Wesley started with English, which transposed to the Sicilian. Both players traded all the pieces pretty quickly, going into an equal rook and opposite bishop endgame. They fought for a while before finally agreeing for a draw. Norderbeck vs Samuel was an Italian game where Sam had some pressure on Norderbeck in middle game, but both players played with 98% accuracy and had a draw. Levon vs Alireza was a French where both players were very well prepared and drew in 25 moves. Pragnananda vs Maxime was a Rossolimo Sicilian which has been played quite a number of times in this tournament, and hence both players were well prepared and drew the game with 98% accuracy. So now let's start with our main game. Gukesh plays black. The game starts with d4, d5, c4, e6. The famous Queen's Gambit declined. The game continues with knight f3, knight f6, knight c3, knight d7. Here, usually white brings out the bishop and then goes e3, but Duda directly goes e3. You guys should definitely try to understand these games, but should never do these in your games. Always follow the simple developing rules of chess. One day, when you become enough hydrated, you will automatically understand when to break the rules. Here, Gukesh plays a6 and Duda goes b3. Now b6 is played to develop the bishop. A trade of center pawns followed by fianchettoing the bishop is done. The game continues with g3, bishop d6, bishop g2, queen e7. Gukesh has out-prepared Duda in the opening since Duda is already worse playing with white and Gukesh hasn't spent any time in his moves till now. But tighten your seatbelts, guys. This move by Gukesh indicates that he might go long castle and go h5 h4. Meanwhile, Duda will go short castle and a4 a5. Duda plays a4. Here, Injan wants long castle. You would say that is bad since c file is open. But if you see, when white goes a5, then black will definitely go b5. And now the pawns are completely locked and there isn't any breakthrough unless white sacrifices a piece. So, black king is pretty safe. Meanwhile, black can still go h5 h4 and it is white king who will face danger. Gukesh goes h5. This might have been some world championship preparation by Gukesh since now finally Gukesh is on his own. Also, this has been played previously between Hikaru and Wesley twice in the Speed Chess Championship. In one game, Wesley had gone h4 and in the other, queen c1. Here, Duda plays queen c1. The idea is that Duda wants to go bishop a3 next, trading the bishops since the bishop will be the most helpful for black in attacking. Here, Gukesh plays a wonderful move knight e3. Now white cannot go bishop a3 since the knight then hangs and white won't want to trade the knights since the pawn on e4 will be very strong and will take a lot of space and black can completely invest around the pawn to create an attack. But Duda misevaluates the position and captures the knight. Gukesh continues with h4. Duda goes bishop a3. Here there was an interesting line with long castle. Bishop x d6, queen x g6, bishop takes pawn, bishop takes bishop, knight takes, queen d5. Here, white can go f3, but after f5, white is in some serious trouble with queen infiltration, opening of h-file and rook e8. So, queen goes f2 and then f5 anyway. Here, there is an amazing defensive move, rook c1, threatening checkmate. So c5, d takes c, queen takes knight, c takes b check, queen takes queen, rook takes queen check, king b7. In this position, even if black is better, but white has 3 pawns for knight now and a lot of counterplay. Well, anyways, nothing of this happens. And going back to the game, Gukesh goes queen e6. The problem with this move is that now Duda can take the bishop and black will have to take with c pawn. And as a result, black king can't castle long anymore. Also, white will have queen a3, knight c4 ideas to pressure on d6. Duda plays queen a3. Here, Gukesh had some options like bishop d5 attacking the b3 pawn, h3 to remove bishop from targeting e3, d5 preventing knight c4, and king e7 or rook h6 to protect the pawn. But Gukesh overthinks for 15 minutes and goes for the wrong move knight f6, reducing his advantage. Now, Duda plays knight c4 and Gukesh will lose a pawn. Gukesh saves d6 and Duda captures on b6. Here, Duda have a threat of going b4, b5 and creating a passer. Gukesh plays a very deep move a5. I will try to explain this to you here very carefully. If now white goes b4, then there's h takes g, h takes g, rook takes rook check, bishop takes rook, queen h3, castle. And now a takes b, queen takes pawn. In this position, white has one weak pawn and black has enough resources to capture that pawn, and hence black has a better position. But if black directly goes h takes g, rook takes rook check, bishop takes rook, queen d3, castle, then white has two connected pawns and black has one weak pawn. So it would be more difficult for black to get rid of them, and hence the position is equal. That's why Duda doesn't go for b4 now and himself captures the h pawn. Here both the bishops are blocked and hence Gukesh had to go bishop a6, preventing the white bishop to change the diagonal. But Gukesh took on h4. Here the white bishop can go f1, but there is even a stronger move, b4. Now if black trades on b file, then the a pawn is no more weak since the rook is behind it, and with queen and knight, there it would have marched down to get promoted. Duda misses the idea and goes rook c1 to get to 7th heaven. Now, Gukesh is again better and the engine again screams for bishop a6, which he played this time. Duda plays b4. Here, the engine wanted pawn trade followed by rook h5, preventing the pawn from moving forward. But Gukesh goes for a long 20-minute thought and played queen g4. And the position is now equal after Duda played bishop f1. Stockfish says white should either trade the pawns or go bishop d3, but Gukesh plays a very practical move queen f3, attacking the rook. Now get ready. It's time for the first brilliant move, pawn to b5. Gukesh can take the rook since it would be a red carpet for the a pawn with knight controlling the promotion square. Gukesh had to save his bishop here, but he goes knight g4, threatening checkmate. It's a mistake. It's time for the second brilliant move, queen a2. It prevents the checkmate and Gukesh takes the rook now. With this, both players are now under 10 minutes. They still needs to play 15 more moves to reach the 40th move and gain additional 30 minutes. Now, if white rushes and takes the bishop, then there is knight h2 which wins the bishop and it's black who is winning now. But Wu said white needs to take the bishop when they can play rook c7, the only move which creates a checkmate threat. Here the only move to keep the game going is queen f3. If Duda takes the bishop here, then there's rook takes h2, pressuring on f2 pawn, and then the game reaches equality. The only move to keep the advantage was bishop g2, deflecting the queen, but more importantly, when queen goes f6 and pawn takes bishop, If Gukesh takes on a2, then it is no more pressuring on f2 pawn, and white can go queen c2. If rook takes bishop, then queen takes pawn, forking the king and rook. If Duda had found this move, then it was game over for Gukesh. But with less than 10 minutes on the clock and 14 moves to make before gaining 30 minutes, Duda didn't find this and takes the bishop instead. The position is equal now, but under tremendous pressure, both players will need to find a series of great and only moves. Now, whoever makes a single mistake will lose the game on the spot. Gukesh takes on h2, and the only move to save the day for white is queen e2. Gukesh cannot go queen f5 since Judah has queen b5 check, trading the queens and connecting the pawns. If Gukesh takes the f2 pawn with knight, then there is queen trade followed by rook c2 pinning the knight to rook, and black can't address two threats together. If black takes on f2 with queen, then after queen trade, there is again a7 and pawn cannot be stopped. So the only drawing move which Gukesh finds is rook f2. Now after queen takes queen and pawn takes queen, white plays a7 and now the only move rook b2. If white promotes, then there is rook takes queen, knight takes, and then rook b1 check. King is forced to go to d2, after which black takes the bishop and has his own unstoppable pawn. Here, the only move for white which Duda plays is knight c1, blocking the promotion square. And now Gukesh don't have time to capture the bishop and promote his own queen. So Gukesh finds the only move knight takes c3, threatening pawn checkmate. Again, Duda has just one move. The third brilliant move, knight takes d6 check. Rook can't take the knight since queen promotes with a check. King goes f8, rook takes f7 check, followed by rook takes f3. Now knight takes bishop and king takes back. After the dust settles, black is still an exchange up, but white has one extra pawn which is about to get promoted. Gukesh goes rook a8. Duda goes rook f7. Gukesh plays rook b4 and now white will lose one pawn. Duda responds with rook c7. This move is a silent killer. The threat is to go rook c8 check, forcing trade of rooks and then promoting queen. Gukesh goes king h7. Duda plays knight c8 and rook takes on d4. Now knight b6. If Gukesh wanted to play here, then he had rook takes a7, rook takes rook to b4, and now if knight moves, then rook takes a4 pawn, and the game would have gone a little more. But both players are now done, and Gukesh plays rook f8 check, Duda goes king e2, Gukesh gives rook e8 check, Duda plays king f3, and now they repeat the position to finally get a draw. This was a crazy 4-hour back and forth battle. Today, all the games went in a draw, and the standings remain unchanged with Fabi still the sole leader. Tomorrow is a rest day, after which we will be left with 4 more rounds. That's from my side for today. If you like my insights, do like the video and subscribe the channel, and definitely press the bell icon to not miss the upcoming recaps. Bye.